I've spent 15 years exploring relationship compatibility. I have come from 3-4 major failed relationships. I had to find a methodology or a system that would find my ideal partner. And I spent 3 years testing this system. AJ, imagine you're at a circus. Which act or performer would you be and why? Unless you're in the same car, you haven't got a chance of growing together. If you're holding back, any time in a relationship, for me, it's not going to grow.
Welcome to Beyond the Obvious again. We have Andreas MatchCreator here, who is an expert and helping us and helps people find their ideal partner. So, Andreas, just help us understand your story, and most importantly, if someone has just tuned in, why should they listen to you?
Hello there, AJ. Welcome. I'm from the UK, London. People, why would they listen to me? I've spent 15 years exploring relationship compatibility. Relationship dynamics is my bag, okay? I have come from 3-4 major failed relationships. I call them lessons, and I've hopefully learned from those. But what I've done, like a lot of my clients, is try and do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And it was my last relationship, late 40s, when I became single, that I decided I had to find a methodology or a system that would find my ideal partner. And I spent 3 years testing this system, and I spent 2 years celibate, focusing on my personal development. And in that process, I discovered what I believe is the true foundation of any relationship. If you want a meaningful connection, the true foundation. And I think I've got the key to that. And I think it's important to spread the word. So anyone who wants to listen, feel free, try it out. And if it works for you like it has for me, that's a good enough reason to listen. Correct?
Awesome. That's great. That's great to hear. How did you get into relationships? Was it because of the challenges you had in relationships that just fascinated you about why, what do I need to learn here? Or was there always an inkling of, I need to explore something here?
Okay. I've always been quite lucky with relationships. If I like the other side, the feminine, the females, I've always been lucky. I've always had the gift of the gab. I might not be the tallest or good looking or whatever. I'm average. I think I'm quite average, but I'm pretty good on the dance floor and I'm pretty good with personality. So I've always been able and lucky with the ladies, let's call it that. So I've always had the gift of the gab, and the opportunity to talk to people and understand them is something I've always enjoyed, helping people. So even when I've been in or out of a relationship, I've always had a good connection. I'm quite friendly with a lot of my exes. So we haven't had really nasty breakups, okay? So I think that's key. So I've been able to understand why we broke up. Now, couple that with my drive for finding my perfect relationship, I felt I needed to develop a system. My background is architecture, so that's where I come from. So I felt I could design a system that would work for me, typical designer. And I thought, if I can design a system that works for me, then it might work for other people. Now, on that journey, on dating sites, because when I became single in my late 40s, I hadn't done dating sites before. I'd spent 13 years in a relationship. I suddenly became single. I find myself on dating sites and happy days, lots of fun. But that isn't what I wanted. I wanted a meaningful connection. I wanted the next relationship to be the one, if possible. But I felt that my usual strategy of I fancy you, I'm going to have you, and I'm going to make you exactly what I want you to be, right? Which is basically, if I like her, I'm going to have her, I'm going to marry her, and she's going to be my wife, no matter what, which is kind of how everyone feels, really, male or female. We always feel that we can create the relationship that we want. And I thought, if I've got to change my result, if you like, I had to change my system, my strategy, which was breaking the cycle. So instead of just liking someone and making them fit my description of my perfect partner, of course I had to like someone, but then I had to filter them down to meet my values, meet my requirements, meet my dynamic. And that dynamic was, in my case, I liked to lead in a relationship. It was very important for me to lead. And it was very important to have a partner that listened, but also a partner that stood on her own, like on her own 2 feet, who was autonomous, had a career perhaps, had some kind of ambition. I hadn't had that sometimes in previous relationships. I felt that I had a partner that was a beautiful person, but wanted more of me, and I wanted more support from them. I wanted a little bit more, yeah, you do your own thing, I do my thing, we come together and we have this amazing relationship, and it's kind of like balanced and it's shared. And I found it frustrating sometimes that I was constantly having to go, come on, motivate yourself. There were reasons why this happened. But I got frustrated. And I found when I started coaching people, I found this was a common denominator. I found people were actually as frustrated as I was. I thought, oh, blimey, I wasn't the only one. And then I discovered that we all kind of, relationships are a spectrum. And partnerships fit into 3 kind of types. That's what I discovered. I won't share too much at this point because I want to use my tool on you so you understand, and your listeners and viewers also understand the process. But basically, I discovered these types, these zones, if you like, of where we fit are actually quite different for everybody. So you've got the saying opposites attract, and you've got the saying lights attract. Well, actually, they both do. But there's also an area in the middle. And that mid zone is where the spectrum lies. So it's not black and it's not white, and it's certainly grey.
Yeah.
Now, that grey area, how do you identify where you sit on that spectrum? And that's what I discovered for myself. And that's what I share with my clients. And I educate people now, including matchmakers, dating coaches, relationship coaches, and HR personnel who create teams within their environment. So it's all about teamwork. So relationships are teams. They're 2 people working together. Now you can take it from love interest, and you can take it from a business and work interest, or from an educational point of view, for example, therapy. So if you've got a couple that are having issues, you can help fix those issues by identifying the cracks and the good points. Yeah. So my system works for all these 3 areas.
That's incredible.
That's where I am at the moment.
Yeah, and it's incredible and very fascinating, the journey you've gone through and what's really led you here. I heard you say something where you initially, when things were not working out, it seemed like you were trying to fit this partner that you're trying to find into this certain scope. Do you feel, I know that you've worked with couples for like 15 years now, do you feel that most people who get into relationships have this expectation in the background that, oh, I can mold this other person to fit my expectations at some point?
That's exactly how everyone is. I haven't met a person yet who's, as a client, who's not said, this is how I used to be. I was a fixer. I was a empath, and I was helping victims. Now, that terminology we're familiar with today, but they were finding a partner who they were helping grow with and helping fix them and helping maybe creating a codependency that wasn't healthy. And I think interdependency is great. A certain amount of codependency can be healthy, but it is generally unhealthy. And the reason it's unhealthy is because if you can't stand on your own 2 feet and you're reliant on someone else, generally it's abuse, because that person can then manipulate you to need them so much they can't stand on their own 2 feet. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I don't educate people. I don't give people therapy. What I do is I give people the education of, this is what the ingredients are. Go off and bake your own cake. So if you recognize yourself here, then go and create your own situation. It's a bit like, if I'm a matchmaker, I can spoon feed you a partner. Mm-hmm. The old saying, I can feed you for a day, or I can teach you to cook for life. Yeah. And that's what I prefer to do. My mission statement, if you like, is to help people help themselves. And you can only do that if you understand a process that works for you.
Yeah.
Okay. You're married, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm married.
So when you chose your partner, and I'm assuming you're obviously ethnic. I'm Greek. You're which background? Where are you from? In India?
I'm Indian.
Okay. So your traditional lifestyle situation is we have introductory weddings. We have where you're introduced to a partner. Perhaps I don't know if you've found your partner on your own, but often we are introduced. Greeks as well. There's an introduction, and if you like the person, you kind of say yeah, and it develops more. That was the traditional one. Obviously, younger folk like myself, younger, have found their own partners. Now, if you find the traditional Greek partner in yourself and in traditional Indian partner, where you've got you're going to similar culture, similar values, families get to know each other, they speak the same language, that kind of thing. That's the glue that holds you together. Yeah. But if you find the partner yourself, it might be slightly different because you're finding them based on what you think you know.
Yeah.
Correct? And I've done that all my life. I've never had an introduction. I've always felt I'm going to find my own partner. I was born in England. What's this traditional stuff about introduction? I kind of felt it was a bit lame. That's my opinion. There's a lot to be said for it. And in modern coaching these days, matchmakers have got a great role because even the matchmakers in India, you're probably familiar with Seema, auntie, the Indian matchmaker. She's great because she's a modern day matchmaker who understands that people need to decide for themselves. But there are traditional values that you can bring to the table, which is quite important. You know, it takes a village to grow a relationship and to grow a family, a child. They often say that. But it helps with the village that you've got someone to go and talk to and discuss and whatever. And if you're in a modern relationship, you're stuck in New York City or wherever you are, and you're that couple that met each other down at the gym, for example, and you're now dating, and you haven't really got that structure around you, family and friends that are from your culture or from your traditional background, things can go sour, and there's no one there to advise you.
Yeah.
And obviously there's coaches like yourself, relationship coaches, who can help you. But not everybody can afford that. And not everybody does that, you know? So I think from my point of view, if I can help people create a foundation to build a relationship on, that's a head start.
Right.
And from an architectural point of view, if you've got no foundations, the building's going to collapse. And I think that's where I've been going wrong. I've often just thought superficially. I've liked this girl. She's drop dead gorgeous in my eyes. I want her. I haven't considered whether she is right for me and I'm right for her. More importantly, I'm right for her. Yeah. If we use the analogy of a work situation, I've got the qualifications. I'm going for that job. If I don't consider what I can give to that business, just as much as they can give me, they'll pay me monetary wise, but I want them to match my ambition. But I also want to convince them and also convince myself that I'm worthy of that job, but I can actually give that business something back. Now, that's how we should be thinking for relationships. So I use a term co-selection, which I think is very important, is when you decide you fancy someone and you might, want some potential relationship with them, you must really consider whether you're right for them just as much as if they're right for you. And if we take that responsibility, we actually take away that square peg into round hole methodology, which is I'm going to make you fit what I want, regardless of what you want. And that's where I'm trying. And that's the bit I've been working on and trying to help clients in the past understand that has always been really difficult because often clients that have had failed relationships will come to me and say, oh, I'm not worthy of this and I'm not worthy of that. And I don't know if I deserve a relationship. No one looks at me and I'm not pretty enough. I've not got all these hot young chicks and I'm middle-aged and men only want this. And the truth is there's always someone that wants you. Mm-hmm. Identifying that person is more important than actually just thinking about them. We can manifest all we want, but the the more you understand yourself and the more you reach your potential, the more you'll be noticed by the right person. So if you're negative, glass half full kind of person, and if you're woe is me, I'm the victim, that's going to come across on your profile on a dating site and in real life. And that's not attractive. You wouldn't turn up at an interview and go, oh, well, no, I don't know if I deserve this job.
Yeah.
You're never going to get it, are you?
Yeah. If you don't have the confidence, why would they hire you?
But you can create the confidence, which is exactly right. You can create the confidence because, confidence is like a muscle. If you work at it, you will grow it. And my methodology, my framework gives people confidence because especially women, I coach mainly women. It helps them take control of their dating. Now, what do I mean by that? Instead of relying on a man in the female sense, it could be used by gays, lesbians, any sex. It's all about relationship dynamics. It's not about the sexual dynamic. So it doesn't have to be man, woman. It could be woman, woman, man, man. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is the beauty of this process, because it can also be where the woman wants to take control as the dominant partner, just as much as the man would usually like to take control. So we flip it on its head. Yeah. It's irrelevant. This process identifies your truth. Okay. So what I was saying was, when you have a situation where you have a woman, for example, who's not as confident as she was, she's not as young as she was, she's feeling a bit rejected, lonely, all these things that she brings to the table, you need to fish out all her positives and give her the confidence to attract the partner she deserves.
Right.
Now, if you give her the right tools, her confidence will grow, because instead of feeling, the scarcity situation, whereas, there's only one guy is interested in me. If you give her the right tools, she can identify more than one guy and also help him recognize her true value. Because you know what? Just by seeing someone's picture, you don't often see their value.
Right.
But once you start talking to someone, especially your introduction, which I think is quite important, because on these dating sites, it's just, hi, good looking, or hi, how are you? How's your day? Well, if I've got 100 in my inbox that say that, I don't really, flip, and they all quite pretty, I don't really see anything. When someone stands out and they're quite unique and they fit my attractiveness criteria, I'll be drawn to her.
Yeah.
So that's what I help teach as well, is how to make yourself attractive. Because recognition is a key to dating. Being recognized.
Yeah.
Standing out to the right person.
Absolutely. Something that you said, which I really want to dig into a little bit so that the audience understands what you're speaking about. What is codependency and what is interdependency in a relationship?
Well, I think I touched on it, but codependency is when you are really, you're so dependent, you can't stand on your own 2 feet. And like I said, it can turn into abuse. Certainly if you're the victim mentality, you then feel you need that person. You can't survive without that person. Now, in truth, there are relationships that work perfectly that way. As long as the person controlling the relationship is not abusing. And I will touch on this a little bit later, okay? Because otherwise I will spoil the tool and the app that we're going to discuss. Interdependency is when you work together, you come in and out of depending on each other, like two chefs in a kitchen working together to make a fantastic meal. It to me, that's equality, but it also can be where you've got one person driving the relationship and one person is supporting, but relying on the one person driving the relationship to direct. That can be interdependent as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily follow that they're that dependent they can't stand on their own 2 feet. I feel all relationships are really interdependent. That's my feeling, because you're a team. How can you be in a relationship if you're not a team? However independent you are from each other, Otherwise, to me, it's just like, well, it's a relationship of convenience. But
Yeah.
if that's the choice of two adults to have that, sleep in different bedrooms, raise children on their own, if that makes you happy, then fine. I haven't met anyone yet that I've coached that's happy with that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
evolved from the honeymoon relationship to, moving down the scale of happy, 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 just accepting a
Yeah.
situation. And to me, that's a situationship that's evolved from a
Yeah.
loving relationship. But I'm not here to fix relationships. I'm here to educate. So
Yeah.
let's ask me any question you want. But I often, if I get someone come to me and they say, I've got all this trauma and I've got all this, I will often refer them to somebody that's specialist in that.
Mm.
And I will say to them, if they feel that you can then come to me and I can coach you on moving forward, drawing a line under where you were and moving forward, then I will work with you as well. But if you haven't, you haven't cured your or dealt with your trauma or cured your issues that you might have. I don't like the word baggage, but the baggage that you've got, because we've all got baggage really, but we've all got lessons that we should have learnt.
Right.
But unfortunately, we tend to make the same mistake over and over again. I've done it myself. I'm
Yeah.
laughing because it took me till I was 47 to actually think, well, now I've got to make this work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
We all
had
go
some
through that
amazing
process.
relationships, by the way, some lovely women, just not right for me and me not right for them. And I must say, it's 50-50. I'm a perfectionist. I'm so difficult to live with. If I've got somebody that can't deal with that, they're going to struggle. And I'm going to struggle because if I'm not dealing with my perfectionism, if I'm not getting something done the way I want it done, I will often kind of pull back and I'll become critical as well. But constructive criticism is healthy. But when it comes from a perfectionist, it can look unhealthy and
Yeah.
nitpicking. And to be honest with you, I've made people suffer from it. And it's a bit like I've got an obsession or I've got an illness, and I'm bringing that to the relationship. And perfectionism is horrible. Yeah, it's horrible. My wife, this wife that I'm with now, my partner, she deals with it amazingly. Now that's given her credit, but she's helped me cure that perfectionism and actually just bite my tongue sometimes and think, you know what? I'm not perfect. Why do I keep feeling that I can do it better than somebody else? That's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think when you're trying to be perfect, you assume that there's one right answer instead of different perspectives and different way to look at perfection. Something that's right for us maybe may not be right for someone else, and it could be a very different version of what perfect looks. But thank you for sharing that.
Indeed. And I also believe it's very important to be selfish when you're dating. When you're dating, in the process, be selfish in what you want and need. And look for someone that's equally selfish in what they want and need that matches your selfishness. And although you're imperfect, there will be some things that you can be selfless with, which is compromise. So, because no one's perfect, I want this kind of thing in my life. If I don't get that, at some point I'm going to resent it. At some point, it's not going to work for me. At some point, it's not going to work for them.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. If, for example, when I say selfish, I don't mean a douchebag or an asshole. I mean selfish in the sense that if I want a certain type of woman, looks wise, if I want to live in the UK and not in Italy or America, why date someone in America if I don't want to live in America? I know that sounds like a pretty bad example, but
Yeah.
people do this sort of thing. They date and they have long distance relationships. And then at some point, or even had kids, they'll say, oh, by the way, I don't want to have kids. I know we've been dating for 2 years, but I don't want kids. Hello? How can you do that to somebody? And I've heard this story over and over again. Be selfish. I want to have kids. There is no way I will be in a relationship unless I'm going to have kids. Obviously, the universe might not give you kids. Okay, let's be
Yeah. That's
honest.
different.
It's
Yeah.
not a given. But if the intention is to do that, then find someone that wants to have kids. If the intention is to go and live in Italy or Spain or America with your partner, make it clear. That's what I want to do. Don't all of a sudden, during the relationship, say, look, I'll go and live in Australia
Right.
because I like it there. And the partner's like, well, you're leaving me behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these are kind of crazy conversations. They're so vast. This kind of conversation is so vast. It should be done right at the beginning.
Right.
Because
Right.
we're not here to waste time.
Yeah.
When you're in your 20s, things get left behind. I get that. We're just dating and you don't really say everything, whatever. But once you hit 30, 35, especially from a woman's point of view, they've got their body clock to consider. Often women will turn around and say, well, I dated this guy till I was 40 and then he said he didn't want to have kids. I was like, devastated. Because where does that leave her?
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. And when you say selfish, I think what you're trying to say is be stubbornly clear about what you need. Don't
Oh, yeah.
compromise on when something's really important to you. Don't mess around with it because you won't be happy, the other person's not going to be happy. Just be extraordinarily clear that this is what I want, and it's okay if this partner is not able to give me that. I'm okay with that. But this is what I want, and I'm going to keep looking for that.
Yeah, and I have three, I call them the 3 C's. Communication, first, to find compatibility, and then compromise. Often people will compromise right at the beginning. As soon as they start communicating, hi, how are you? Oh my God, she's amazing. Compromise. I don't care that she doesn't want to have kids. I don't care because I will make her decide she wants to have kids with me. I found myself in that same position, by the way. I was dating a girl in my late 20s and she kept saying to me, I don't know if I want to have kids. I've got my reasons and I can't share those, but I've got my reasons why I don't know if I want to have kids. And I kept thinking to myself, but you know what? You will want to have kids with me. Obviously, the previous guys you were with, you didn't want their I was thinking, you didn't want their babies. You're going to want my babies. And it wasn't until about 3 years into the relationship that she made it painfully clear, no kids. It's not going to happen. And at that point, I suddenly realized this relationship's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought, how have I got 3 years down the line and fooled myself into believing that I'm going to convince her to change her mind? Now, that's the square peg in the round hole.
Yeah.
Now, that's where I needed to be selfish right from the beginning. I want to have kids. I kept saying it, but I kept hearing, I'm not sure, or I don't really want kids. I should have made it painfully clear. If you're not sure, we can't go forward because I am not going to try and change you.
Yeah.
And that's the important ingredient here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We shouldn't be living in this world of, I'm going to change you. I'm going to make you something you're not. You wouldn't date a vegetarian. Well, it's not fair, but you wouldn't date a vegetarian or a vegan and try and force them to eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't. That to me, that's abuse. Okay. So
Yeah.
why would you actually expect someone to change their mind about children or living in a different state or living in a different country or, leaving their family? I mean, I'm talking about here where things that like your family and your support unit. You live in Seattle, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. If you were dating someone in Seattle and then all you broke up and then you were dating someone in, West Coast and then, you met them and they moved to the West Coast because that's where they lived and they expected you to go and live there. But all the time you're thinking, I'm never going there. That's not very fair. That's what I'm talking about. Be selfish. Be stubbornly clear.
Yeah.
If you can resolve that issue, if you can sit down and go, you know what, we're going to compromise. Again, communication, compatibility, compromise. Only compromise when you're compatible. Don't compromise before.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Because it's easier. It's what I say. It's better to compromise after you're compatible than it is to compromise before. Because if you compromise before, you're not compatible, are you?
Yeah.
I know it sounds kind of it's illogical, but it is. If you're already compromising, you've kind of swept the stuff under the rug.
Yeah.
You're not going to talk about that.
You're not paying attention to what you need.
And the issues, yeah, exactly. Those issues are going to come up. One day you're going to put the rug up and you're going to see all the dirt and you're going to go, hey, we haven't discussed this baby thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
It's like, and then she painfully said, listen, I don't know why you're deluded, she said. Well, not quite that bad, but I don't know why you're thinking that I would ever change my mind, because I've already
Right.
explained to you why I don't want to have children. And to this date,
Yeah.
she hasn't got, we're still good friends. But, and that was 30 odd years ago. But what I'm saying is, I made the mistake of, we see it on Hollywood, don't we? We see it in Hollywood all the time. The guy meets the girl and she doesn't like him, and he's gonna change her. He's gonna do something and
Yeah.
win her over. You know what I
Yeah.
mean, don't you?
Yeah.
And we've all got that in our heads, that we think we can win the heroine.
Yeah.
I'm going to be
Yeah.
the hero, and I'm going to win the heroine over. 50 Shades of Grey is a good example, where
Yeah.
that's abuse. Stalking her, going to work and telling her, I want to make you mine, is not consensual.
Yeah.
That's not how it should be.
Yeah.
Someone says no, take it as a no and walk away.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think this is the perfect segue to get into discussing about the app and what you've been developing. And I think the audience will be curious about what you've got going
Okay,
on.
well,
By the way, if you are married and are facing compatibility issues in your marriage, I've created a free guide with 5 tools that will bridge that gap. You can grab it using the link below.
this is the longest conversation I've had without asking the question prior to having a long discussion. So we've talked about elements of what I believe a relationship should be, or how I coach my clients and how I help people. Now, look, people have got different opinions, and like
Yeah.
we've talked about in the past, there are some great educational relationship experts out there, and we've all got different opinions. So if you can pick
Yeah.
the best out of all of them, you're going to make a great opportunity work for you. Okay. So where I come from is the foundation. So I've devised a tool, the Circus Question, which is now an app. And I think you're going to put it in the link, but just for people, if they want to jot it down as we go along, it's the circus question.passion.io. I'm using a Passion app for this because it's a white label app. It's actually a web browser link at the moment until we actually release in the stores. So we're beta testing. And the Circus Question itself is what I'm going to ask you now.
Awesome. Let's
So
go.
AJ and listeners, if you want to clear your mind, take a deep breath, just to ground yourself, clear your mind of everything, and just listen to my voice. AJ, imagine you're at a circus. Imagine the lights, the sounds, the smells, the fun, the laughter, the thrills, and the suspense. Now imagine you're one of the acts or performers. Which act or performer would you be, and why?
Okay. When I think of performers and acts, I haven't been to too many circus shows, so maybe I'm not aware of too many. I know maybe 1 or 2 roles, but the one that comes to me is the lion tamer.
Okay, lion tamer. And your why? Why do you think you chose that, or why do you feel that
The
you're drawn to
thrill,
that?
the suspense of
Thrill,
working with that.
suspense. Okay, right. Okay, so you've given me some clues as to why you associate yourself with lion tamer. So what the question does, because we've spoken about a few elements, we can go straight into this. Normally I take a step back and say, right, the question is a tool to identify your ideal relationship dynamic by understanding your role in that relationship. So your role in your ideal relationship is one where you are fully in control. You like to be the leader of that relationship. If you like, a traditional relationship is where the man is the head of the family and the woman is the support, the nurturing, bringing up the children, looking after the home, whatever. That's the traditional role. Nothing wrong with that at all. It works for you. That's the ideal relationship that you need, where you are in total control. When I say total control, I don't mean abuse. I mean that you feel that you need to be the strength of the relationship. You feel that you need to be the breadwinner. You feel you need to be the decision maker. You feel that you need to open the doors, pay for supper, do all the things like a gentleman, those traditional roles that a man would do. Okay? The husband, from your culture especially, yeah?
Yeah.
It's very rare that it's flipped on its head.
Yeah,
Correct?
for me, I think what I'm hearing is it doesn't directly fit into what I envision into my ideal relationship. But what comes to me is that maybe it's the control of the elements where I want to be. So, for example, if I want to be a great support system, that's my controlling lever, and that's the one I want to control.
Oh yes, yes. There's various everything's it's all polarity and it's a spectrum. Okay. Now the polarity is that you feel comfortable when you're in control. You feel comfortable when you're leading. If you weren't leading and you weren't in control, you would feel uncomfortable, insecure, and frustrated that you're not able to be, I'm just going to say, the man in the relationship. Okay. If you were with a partner that didn't respect you as the head of the family, you would feel uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that you don't, because your ideal relationship is where you're balanced. You are feeling comfortable, they are feeling comfortable in their role, and their role is to support in a different way to yours. Yours is direction, hers is support. She feels she needs direction. Your partner feels comfortable that and she trusts you. Just like the lion tamer, the lion is powerful. There's no weakness here. By the way, this is not dominant submissive in the sense of strength and weakness. The submissive is often stronger than the dominant. It takes great strength to allow someone to actually take control of you. Okay? In this example, there is no weakness. It's all about balanced dynamic. So your ideal balanced dynamic is one where you feel comfortable being the gentleman, being the man, traditional role. But you also are able to move down the spectrum into your feminine side. You're able to do that, but you predominantly live in your masculine. You predominantly feel, whether that is your predisposed Indian roots, the culture where you're, like I was, spoon-fed to be the breadwinner, spoon-fed to be, I've got to be the man of the household. Can't let my wife do that. Yeah, I've got to support my wife in that sort of strength. I've got to be her strength. If there's a problem, I've got to man up. You understand? That's how I was brought up. But in my culture of being brought up in the UK, I was emancipated. I was told to share, to do the nappies and the diapers or whatever you call them in the States, to do my fair share of workload. And that didn't hurt me because I still open doors, I still pay for dinners, I still like to be the gentleman. Mm-hmm. And in my role is ringmaster. I chose ringmaster because I like to control, but I also like to nurture and help other people be the best they can be. Yeah? So none of the roles are wrong. They're all perfect for each individual. Mm-hmm. And I think the only time you recognize that you're not comfortable outside of that role is when you haven't got what you need. So in essence, you must be pretty happy with your relationship. I'm assuming that. But mm-hmm. Your wife gives you exactly what you need. It doesn't mean she doesn't stand on her own 2 feet and she's not strong. Lions are strong, yeah, by virtue of the analogy.
Yeah.
The truth is, she might not be a lion.
Yeah. May I interrupt you? Because I'm very, very fascinated by this. So what I've noticed is that I'm not actually a traditional husband, just to make it clear. So I'm quite different. What does kind of maybe sound true is there are areas where I prefer to lead, and there are areas where she prefers to lead. So there's a lot of fluidity in the way the relationship flows, and we both enjoy that. I think there are certain places where she loves that I'm taking full control or leading the situation, and there are some situations I love that she's completely leading it. And I think that's how the dynamic flows. And there are certain places where it's total balance. It's like we're swinging with each other and we're trying to figure out the entire relationship together. So maybe my intuition is there's even more nuance to what you're saying. That I feel like there's even more depth in what you're saying.
Yes, and what you're describing is more the modern relationship of where traditional relationships have evolved to, where we are partnerships that are sharing now roles. So, you know, your wife, I know what you do, but I don't know what your wife does. But maybe she's standalone, her own company. Maybe she's got her own career, and you know, you're independent enough to, you know, go to work each day and come back in the evening and adopt that role at home where you swap direction.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, normally I would say lion tamer, someone who picks lion tamer, wants that insecurity that you would feel if you didn't have any control is greater than the security of not having it. Does that make sense? So if you were in a situation where your wife was wanting to take control all the time, you wouldn't feel happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that wouldn't suit me. And if I was doing the same thing, I think she wouldn't be happy either.
No. What does she do? It's just a matter of interest. I mean, don't have to explain it, but has she got a career, or is she a home wife? You know,
no,
that's vitally important, of course.
She's got a career.
Okay, so from her point of view, it's important that she has her independence too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's attracted you to her. But she still allows you to be the man, you know, in the relationship. You know, when I say the man, I mean, she allows you, she wouldn't belittle you and say, right, I'm in control of this relationship. To all of her friends, look at him. He's just, you know, I do what I want. He just listens to me. Yeah?
Right.
It's still traditional in that respect, no?
I'm trying to understand what you mean by the man, because I think we have.
Yeah, maybe I'm being gender, you know, stereotypical in respect of, maybe I'm being gender. I'm trying to understand what a man would traditionally take the bins out, wash the car, cut the grass, do the DIY work, paint the house. You know,
Yeah, actually, that's quite contrary to our relationship.
So
we
you
both.
actually,
Yeah,
you both
we
enjoy
both swing
that.
around. Yeah.
Do you know what might be interesting then? It might be interesting if you ask her the question. I wouldn't be surprised. She doesn't pick lion. I wouldn't be surprised that she picks in this Circology framework that I've created. I've numbered all the acts.
Right.
So the numbering system is important because in the framework, you're able to add the two numbers of each roll up. For example, your roll is a 9.
Yeah.
And if lion is a 1. So the perfect 10, 9 and 1 is 10. Right? Now, it wouldn't surprise me that your wife is actually quite a high number, which, contrary to my framework, it would have its own issues because two lion tamers would fight over control. But you would understand each other perfectly. So there is a possibility, you see, when therapists use my framework, they get a couple into the room and they fire off the question together. And the couple say, lion tamer, elephant, for example, elephant.
Yeah.
And then the therapist says, okay, these are your positive and negative traits. These are your positive and negative traits. Can you see now why you're arguing? Can you see now what is good about this relationship?
Yeah.
Can you see the cracks?
Yeah.
And it becomes a visual description of the dynamic, which is important. So maybe, and I'm guessing now, maybe your wife is up there on a high level, a high number. So if you added the two together, you'd be actually much higher than a 10. And normally I would advise people when they're dating not to go there. So it'll be interesting to find out. And I'm not saying, oh my God, it didn't work. What I'm saying, it's working for you. And that's more important.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to hear what she answers. And I've got a feeling, I'm looking at this is my Circology framework, by the way. And is it backwards? I think it's backwards, isn't it?
It's a little blurred out at the moment, but
so
I see the higher part to my left and the lower part to
the lion tamer's at the top,
uh-huh.
and 9 working back in half increments. So 9, 8.5, 8. All the acts are within that spectrum. So the lion tamer is at the top, and the lion is at the bottom. only because they're the most extreme polarity of control.
Right.
Support and control. Who wants to
Yeah.
be led and who consensually led and who wants to lead.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
extreme. And that's the dynamic that works when people are dating. And I say, look, if you want complete and utter leadership, you need someone that's going to give you that support and
Right.
expect to listen to you
Yeah.
without being defiant. Now we
Yeah.
know lions will go rah 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 and fight back. You want to be challenged, but you also need someone that's not going to be defiant and works as a team with you. To get the best out of the show, you need lions that jump into hoops.
Yeah.
If the lion just
Yeah.
walks around the cage, you're not got a show. That's a relationship's not going to work.
Yeah.
So, that's the analogy. But we've also got the top end of the spectrum between 7 and 9. We've got clowns, we've got magicians, we've got knife throwers, we've got horse riders, horse trainers. These are the acts that like to have control. For example, the magician needs a magician's assistant.
Mm.
That's their perfect dynamic. Someone that does as she's told, or he. Remember, this is not gender relative. So it could be a female magician. She needs a man who's going to listen to her, let her take control, let her be the star of the show, the relationship. We've often seen women that are really talkative and loud, and the husband just stands back and admires what he's got. And we think, well, he's the quiet one. That's the kind of dynamic of magician and magician's assistant, where she can be the star of the show. She's larger than life. Maybe she's got a career where she's a lawyer or something, and she talks all day, and it's irrelevant. It's magic for them, and he's the supportive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
Um,
I do. I'm getting
in the
it.
middle section between 7 and 3, we've got all the numbered acts that are acrobats, gymnasts, balancing acts, tightrope walkers, flying trapeze, solo trapeze, the silks, where they rely on independence, but they also rely on balance. And balance
Right.
being the key word, they share the dynamic. So
Right.
sometimes one leads and sometimes the other one leads, which is what you're describing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
feel
I'm wondering,
I have a feeling that maybe there is all the other problem is I don't know all the roles of this.
you don't. Yeah, there could be
Yeah.
that. There could be
And
that. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. And that's why maybe I just picked out whatever seemed like the
you're
best
familiar
one
with.
in my head.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Well,
maybe I actually
therefore,
resonate with something else.
yeah, maybe. And to be fair, that possibly is the case. But
Yeah.
I'm still guessing that your wife is going to pick something that's quite high on the list, which would identify with, maybe she does pick something like Aerial Silk, and that's a balanced 4-5 act. And
Yeah.
if you had known that, maybe you would have picked that, and that would identify your need to share.
Yeah.
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 So I use the analogy of driving a car to a destination. A relationship is, we know where we want to go. We're in this car together. This is the journey. In a traditional relationship, you're the driver.
Right.
She's the passenger. She trusts you. She trusts wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
We know where you're going to go, but however you take me there, you take me there. I trust you.
Right. Yeah.
And you drive me. And I just want to be the
Yeah.
passenger looking out the window,
Yeah.
talking about the weather, and love that situation.
Yeah.
The opposite side of the spectrum is the balanced dynamic where you both swap driving.
Yeah.
Sometimes you drive, sometimes she drives, sometimes she decides we're going to stop here and have a break. We're going to go and look at that mountain, on
Yeah.
the journey, in that
Yeah.
life's journey to that destination. We are sharing
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Where you have a problem in a relationship is when two people are that independent, they're not as connected. Forget the honeymoon phase. The honeymoon
Yeah.
phase, everyone is holding hands,
Yeah.
kissing, can't get enough of each other. The
Yeah.
reality is this: you're both in separate cars. You both think you're going to that destination, which is, for life. We call it
Yeah.
marriage for life. But because you're in different cars and you don't really have the same values, you don't really
Yeah.
have the same needs and wants and whatever, you haven't thought that through. You're thinking, well, we're going to get there. And what happens when you follow someone on a journey,
Right.
especially for a city, you're going to get
Yeah.
broken up. Someone's
Yeah.
going to get there first. The other person's going to get upset and resentful that you've left them behind. Because I often hear this phrase in relationships: I can't be with this person because they can't keep up with me.
Yeah.
I've left them behind.
Mm-hmm.
We were together at one point, but now we've grown apart. And the grown apart, the analogy of the driving is we've lost each other. You've gone off in a different direction, or she's gone off in a different direction. So unless you're in the same car and you've decided the rules of engagement are we share the direction and driving or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
or you're going to adopt that role and I'm going to support your role, no matter what, you haven't got a chance of growing together, because the only
Yeah.
constant is change. Okay.
Yeah.
We know that. As
Yeah.
coaches, we know we all evolve. But if
Yeah.
you're in the same car, using the analogy, if you're in the same car, you're likely to change direction together.
Yeah.
You're going to get to the same destination, but you're both moving together. It's symbiotic. It's
Yeah.
perfect. The balance is right for your relationship, whether you're traditional or you're not traditional, you're modern,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
sharing. You're likely to grow together. Whereas if you're in two separate cars, two different pages, you're never going to keep that up.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've only realised that now after how many
Mm-hmm.
years? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you listen, I don't know if this is your first love relationship. It could be. But I've had loads of them. And unfortunately, I'm a statistic like a lot of other people, which I hated. I
Yeah.
first got engaged at 22. And I
Uh-huh.
wanted that Hollywood relationship of, oh, this is love and forever. And like my parents got married at 22, funnily enough. And I wanted that. But I wasn't going to, you can't force it,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially
You can't
today.
force it.
You can't force it.
You can't force it. Yeah.
No, but you can have a strategy to make it
Yeah.
work for you. Like I
Yeah.
said, it's all about interview technique. It's
Right.
all about understanding somebody, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to understand yourself first. Know
Yeah.
thyself first. Certainly be in love with yourself,
Yeah.
because you can't love someone else if you don't
Yeah.
love
If you
yourself.
don't even appreciate
You know what
yourself.
I mean? I don't
Yeah.
mean love like in a narcissistic,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
negative
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean positive about
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. And what really stands true to me is if people are in two completely different pages, if they have no idea of where they're going, if one thinks they're going in one destination and the other is completely thinking they are going to another destination, no relationship can work. It has to be a coordinated, synchronized movement where you can go together, you can have different views or different visions, but you have to reach together. And the moment you start going at a different pace, or you stop, you leave your partner behind, you're trying to go too fast, it all falls apart. It all
Absolutely.
completely falls apart. The scaling system that you mentioned, is it based on control, or were there other factors that kind of
Okay.
contributed to the scaling system?
Okay. There is two elements that I explored: the power dynamic in a relationship, and the masculine and feminine essence.
Okay.
And to me, they're both polarities, they're both spectrums. So we all have masculine and feminine essence in us. I feel very connected with my feminine just as much as I do with my masculine. So I can hang with my male friends and talk soccer and boxing and, that kind of sportsman stuff.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't say fishing because I don't do fishing, but hunting or whatever it might be. Very masculine kind of lifestyle. But I can also sit down with a group of girls and have an amazing chat about parenting, psychology, nurturing, growth, creativeness, whatever. And I'm in touch with my feminine. I didn't know what that was about. Years ago, I couldn't understand it. I thought, how can I easily flip from one to the other? Why is my creative side so strong?
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was feminine or gay. It wasn't that I was gay, but I felt just as creative as a lot of my gay friends.
Right.
Do you understand? So it wasn't a
Yeah.
sexual
Yeah.
thing. It was very
Yeah.
much being in touch with my feminine side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I created the scaling system, it became apparent that people that were on the higher end of the scale were more masculine. Often I would be coaching CEOs, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and they would choose from 7 upwards. And often people that were in admin and support would be, where they were teachers or they were, that kind of thing, where they were service orientated. They would be from the lower end of the spectrum. And when I would discuss masculine, feminine essence, they would say, yeah, you know what? I feel like that. So I kind of thought, I put two and two together and I thought, we are on a spectrum. We can move from one to the other. We are allowed by society. It tolerates us to be masculine and feminine in various different guises.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
In the traditional world, especially if you were in the military, you couldn't be, you had to be a man. You know what I mean? You had to be, what are you doing being like this? That's airy fairy. You've got to be a man. So
everything
you weren't
was
allowed.
Control.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't allowed to be weak. Feminine was a sign of weakness. Well, we know that's not true. Absolutely. It's stronger to be feminine. I mean, I won't quote you William Golding, but the truth is women are the stronger sex. They grow kids, they make houses. We're the support. I'm not saying that because I just adore women. I'm a philogynist. I love women. But I also understand that they've had they've had hard time. And gradually women are becoming, I hate the term fierce feminine because I think it just makes it the opposite end of the spectrum. It's kind of making women feel that they've got to beat men up to respect them. That isn't how it should be.
Yeah.
Boss bitch, and those sort of terms and that. I don't need that. Just don't tell me you're a boss bitch. You are a lovely woman.
Yeah.
Be a strong woman.
These labels are one of the worst things that we do. This person is just this, or this person is just this. Whereas everyone has a spectrum. Everyone has a different scale of what they explore. And truly, absolutely, I agree with you.
And it certainly wouldn't be right for a man, I can't use the terminology, but the man to express how masculine he was in a derogatory way. Just like boss bitch or fierce feminine or,
exactly.
Then it would be like, well, you narcissistic B steward, how horrible that would be. That sounds toxic. And when I went on dating sites and I'm seeing women, not looking as pleasant because they're angry and they not hate men, but they've got this low opinion of men. So they're showing that in their photos. They're showing that in their profile. And that's not attractive. Just like it wouldn't be attractive if a man was showing how masculine he was.
Right.
When the reality is, be yourself, be kind, be nice, and you'll attract someone that mirrors that, surely.
Yeah. And something that I've been thinking about, when you mentioned that change, as coaches, we know change is constant, right?
Yeah.
People are constantly evolving. When people are evolving, it's but natural. Maybe they're moving their position on the scale. Maybe they start higher up and they're going lower, or one is starting lower and going higher. Given that this process is inevitable, how do they make sure they still continue together? Right. Such that, they're not getting separated in different directions?
Okay, let's be blunt. There is no guarantee. Okay, there is absolutely no guarantee. Let's say you studied as a doctor. You studied as a doctor, you spent 7 years, and 15 years in, you decided, I don't like this career anymore, I'm changing. That can happen. So why can't a relationship? Same way. Often most people decide, I don't want this relationship anymore for whatever reason. So there is always a possibility. The thing is, we need to we just want to tip the balance in our favor. That's what you're saying, isn't it? How can we guarantee that we grow together? Yeah. Because we are going to change.
Yeah.
Now, the truth is, we don't know for sure. But like I said, if you're in the correct foundation, if you're in the right dynamic to begin with, where you are right now, when you answer the circus question, anyone answering the circus question is answering it now. It's visceral. You're not answering the question from 10 years ago. I'm not asking you to imagine in 10 years where you would be. I'm asking you now. Right. And our unconscious mind, because the question works in two parts. The first part is to imagine you're at a circus. That's the conscious mind. creating a picture. So I create a picture in your mind, and then I allow you, with an embedded command of imagine, to imagine what role you would be. And the truth comes out. Now, in your case, you perhaps you couldn't imagine the circus so much because you didn't have a vision. So in fairness, I can honestly say, if you were able to imagine 50 or so acts, you might have
then I
picked
would
one that
probably
was
have a
more
much better
relevant.
understanding.
Maybe. And that would happen with everybody. But what it is, and this is the important part, is understanding your balance. What you've described to me is a balance dynamic. So if you've described that balance dynamic, I don't need your role in the circus. All I need is that you need, not want, you need a relationship where your partner's going to share the driving, if you like. You're going to share that direction. So if I was coaching you, okay, the tool hasn't quite hit the nail on the head. The lion tamer perhaps is not right for you, but the dynamic you're describing is exactly what I would be looking for. If I was a matchmaker, I would be looking for someone, AJ, who fitted the bill of a balanced dynamic and bring them to you and say, this is the kind of person that you need. Now, does she fit your criteria physically, value-wise, emotionally? Do you connect with your, leisure, your activities, blah, blah. Does that all fit? Because the foundation, I think, fits your personality.
Got it. Okay.
So if you're already on the right foundation, it's very unlikely that you're going to drift a lot way apart.
Got it. Okay. So even if there is some growth, there's much higher chance of just coordinated movement, because people are not going to drift too far away from where they start. And so that's what makes it a much better chance of just having a much better chance at a better relationship using this tool.
Let me give you the antithesis of that. And let me say it from a point of view of what we're talking the acts now. If you are the lion tamer and you need full control and you need to be the director of the relationship and you like someone that's going to listen to you and do as they're told, simple terms like that, and you meet someone that's, say, flying trapeze, that role, and that role's a 5.5. I'm just saying 5.5. If you add 9 and 5.5, that's 14.5. That's overwhelm, not underwhelm. That's overwhelm. When you're over 10, it's overwhelm. When it's under 10, it's underwhelm. In other words, that person is going to give you far more pushback, right? That's going to fail. No matter what, at some point, there's not going to be any growth. All that's going to happen, there is no growth. The only growth is you're going to learn that she's not going to do what you want her to do. She's going to learn that I don't want to be controlled by him. And that becomes abuse. Technically, that's toxic. So it becomes unhealthy and can turn into really bad abuse, because a lion tamer who's not getting what he needs becomes jealous. His insecurity blows up, and the lack of control makes them so anxious. Imagine the role where the lion is attacking the lion tamer. What's the lion tamer going to do? He's start fighting back and start panicking, and that rage becomes abuse.
And in fact, they'll try to whip more. They'll try to gain even more control, and then things go wrong.
And that's the kind of abusive relationships that exist already. Now, that's not growth, is it? So that's the opposite. That's the realization that you're in the wrong dynamic. After the honeymoon phase, however long it takes, like I said, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, at some point, the realization is, I am with the wrong person. And I know that because I've coached so many women who have said, when I've explained this framework to them and the roles and explained the positive and negative traits of the relationship, they said, that's the kind of guy I was with. He wanted full control. He didn't respect me. He didn't accept me. And what happened was I then created, there was contempt in the relationship because I didn't like him anymore. I felt contempt for him. Whenever I spoke to somebody, instead of saying I love my husband, I bloody hate him. Now, that's always fascinated me, how we can be in love with someone that much that we can't get enough of them. And then all of a sudden, somewhere down the line, we don't care if we see them or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that to me, that's obviously not growth.
Yeah.
That's not
That's not
growth.
growth.
That's realization.
Yeah.
Growth is when you're flourishing, when you're both flourishing together. You know, you're growing. You're getting the best of each other. You're not going to get the best of each other if you hate each other. So it's going to break up because we're allowed to break up these days. You know, 50 years ago, our parents, our great grandparents, whatever, not they weren't allowed, but it was shunned upon. The village wouldn't let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
The village wouldn't let it happen. That someone in the village would say, "Listen, guys, you can't do this. I know you're arguing. Everyone argues." I used to hear this all the time. Come on, everyone argues. What are you doing?
It's just
You
a
know,
part of life.
look at me and your mother. We argue all the time. And you know, I'm not saying my parents, but you know, this is this phrase: look at me and your mother, look at your grandpa. They've always argued, but do you know what? You end up loving each other in the end. Well, you've got no choice. They didn't have a choice. If you didn't love them in some way or shape, look, familiarity can breed love, acceptance, right? I'm not saying my grandparents didn't love each other. Absolutely, they did. From where I was standing, they weren't allowed to not.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to not. They tolerated each other as much as possible. I mean, I have a saying that modern dating is interviewing for the position of husband, lover, soulmate, wife, confidant.
Yeah.
For the position of that, for as long as you can tolerate them.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, when we don't want someone anymore, we just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
We just get our bags and go. I've done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
My partner's done it, or we sat down and discussed it, but we don't tolerate it now.
Yeah.
And that's good and bad, because you know what? There possibly are relationships where you could navigate the conflict and make the relationship work, which is where some coaches are using this framework in their therapy sessions to exemplify where the cracks are. Like I said, lion tamer, controlling. You know, if you can compromise and let him take control sometimes, and compromise and let her stand on her feet sometimes, she's not pressing your buttons to make you feel anxious and uneasy. She's pressing your buttons because that's her nature.
Yeah.
And you were in love with her at some point, and she was in love with you at some point.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can compromise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can make it work.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can also see the differences and walk away.
Yeah. 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 So you mentioned to me that this entire thing also has applications outside of just relationships, which is in the leadership space, in the corporate space, and for coaches. So I understood how coaches can use this. I understand how this is useful in the personal life. I'm curious how this would be useful in the HR world or in the corporate world, especially because if you have a leader and you have a team, you have a variety of personalities. So does that mean you use that to work in different ways with different personalities, or as a group, how the leader presents himself? Very curious from that angle how this would work.
Okay. I'll give you the example of where I am right now with this. I have an associate who's using this in HR. This actual person has a big team below them, and it runs into several hundred people. When they are interviewing for internal jobs, you know, the appointments internally, they know these people by their name and by their qualifications and by their loyalty to the company. But when they're interviewing for a role that's specific to leadership or administration or support or whatever, they need to identify very quickly who's ideal for this role.
Right.
But they also need to identify who isn't. Now, the qualifications might be there, the loyalty might be there, but it's just a simple tool to identify conflict, potential conflict. If I'm the leader, I'm the manager, I want somebody to come and support me in my business, you know, as a support person. The last thing I want is, if I'm a lion tamer like yourself, you're a lion tamer, is another lion tamer because I know there's
Yeah.
going to be conflict. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it won't work, but it does mean that it probably won't, because they will challenge me.
Yeah.
Whereas I might want somebody that actually wants to listen and learn.
Yeah.
So it's a quick filtering system. It's not going to replace,
Yeah.
other situations.
Yeah.
But we've been testing it, and it's only in its infancy, and the results are really quite intriguing, because when you get 1,000 applications for one job in a
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
how do you figure out? They've all
Yeah.
qualified. They're all kind of, I'm not saying if they say lion. By the way, if you corrupt the system and say I'm a lion tamer because you think you're going to get the job because it means you're a leader, there's lots
Mhm.
of questions afterwards that reveal
Yeah.
that you're definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a process of, I answered the right question, I've got the job. But if you answer the question truthfully, being positioned in the right placement
Yeah.
within a company is important for you as well. There's
Yeah.
nothing worse than being put into a role in a company where you cannot deliver.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
You're going to get found out, and
Yeah.
equally, it's not going to be comfortable for you.
Yeah.
How
I
often
mean,
has
it's
someone said,
not.
I'll give you this money, I'll headhunt you, I want you to do this job, I see
Yeah.
you're perfect for this, and really you're not.
Okay.
So it's similar to the relationship dynamic of being in that honeymoon phase. Of course, at the beginning, it's going to be fine, but somewhere along the line, it's not going to work.
Yeah. We are now approaching the end of this conversation, but before we end it, I had an interesting question for you. What are three beliefs that are ridiculous to other people, but you have found them to be profound truths that couples must follow?
Three beliefs that I feel couples must follow. One is your truth, which is, as I said, with the circus question, for me, it reveals your truth being your role right now. Okay. So that's something for me that's very important to create a foundation, put two and two together, and they work. The second, and that's authenticity, by the way. And the second for me is understanding potential. Realizing relationship potential is very important. For example, I ask people sometimes, I say, from a relationship point of view, what have you given in the past? On a scale of 1 to 10, what have you given in the past in a relationship? From a scale of 1 to 10, towards the relationship, what number would you give it? I mean, I'm asking you, but you're in a happy relationship. But let's say somebody's broken up. And they say, I've been a 7. And I say, well, why didn't you give 10? Why didn't you give 100%? And they said, well, and they say, well, hold on a minute. How do you expect to grow in a relationship? It just like a high performance athlete. If a high performance athlete is not giving 100%, they won't break the next record.
Yeah.
They won't break their personal best.
Yeah.
You can only get better if you give 100%. Okay? Now, where a coach comes in to help you achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the 7 becoming the 10, because the coach comes in and says, right, you're a 7. That's where I can help you. So it's important to recognize potential. And that goes for relationship as well. We're not perfect. Recognize the potential in a person that you can grow together if you're giving 100%. If you're holding back any time in a relationship, for me, it's not going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's important.
Yeah.
And the third thing, I think communication is key. I mean, maybe I've repeated that, but communication is key. Be honest. Be
Yeah.
as honest. You know what? The fear, and there's two types of fear. There's two types of fear. Do you know the two types of fear? Maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but do you know what the two types of fear are?
I haven't heard of the two types of fear actually, so I would love to hear
Okay.
about it.
It's something that I talk about, so I don't know, maybe I created this, but two types of fear. It's obvious what they are. The fear of the known, which is, I know fire's going to burn me. Yeah? Oh, that's going to
Yeah.
burn me. I've burnt myself before. And the fear of the unknown. And
Right.
the unknown is either I've heard about it or I think it's going to happen. Now, in a relationship, we go into both. I know what happened before in the previous relationship, and I know the problems I had, therefore I'll sabotage it. Or I think this is going to break up because, statistically 50% relationships break up. I'm just using that number. And therefore any cracks, we're going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Now, if you can overcome both those as a couple, you've got an opportunity of growing together.
Right.
Because what usually happens, the slightest crack and people sabotage the relationship. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm with the wrong person. They talk to their friends. Instead of getting support and whatever, often friends will say, well, just leave him. I hear that all the time. Just leave him. Oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
Especially when the kid's involved.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you need to stay with someone forever just because of the kids. But I think we need to take responsibility these days for our choices.
Yeah.
And in my case, co-selection is crucial.
Yeah.
Co-selection, choosing for you and choosing for them, which is what I talked about before. It's crucial. So co-selection is my other one. I call it co-selection, but there's a term that relates to that isn't exactly what I talk about. But it's taking responsibility for your choice as well as for theirs and make them do the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being very adult, it takes till about 40 to decide to do that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas if you do that in your 20s, 25, 30, you actually are going to find a good relationship because you're practicing. It's like building the muscles. You're practicing something that's meaningful.
Yeah.
And meaningful connections is what it's all about. That's what my app is about. It's about helping you, guiding you, whether it's online or in real life, guiding you to find the result that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Whether that's casual or formal. So casual good relationships are just as good as formal good relationships. I mean, I've been there. I've done all the fun nights and just sex and just whatever. And you can escape that without much emotional damage.
Yeah.
But if you keep jumping from one relationship to the other and not mending yourself or not learning from that experience, often you're just adding more and more grief to your baggage.
Yeah.
You're building more and more weight on you and you're taking it to the next relationship. So I think space to reset is important.
This has been a fascinating conversation and there was so much back and forth. I completely loved it and there's so much nuance to what you're doing. So thank you for giving us your time and giving us your energy to be here and sharing all your wisdom with us. I hope that we can probably have another conversation sometime in the future.
I'm sure we can.
But until then, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching.
You can find me on my website, circology.life.
Okay.
It'll be in the link, I think.
Make sure to check it out. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
If you want to bridge the compatibility issues in your marriage even faster, click the link below to access the free guide I mentioned earlier.